Hi guys, Mr. Fraser here from NeonMaths, Bright Maths, Bright Future. Today we're going to be doing the basics of a topic which, depending on where you study, has different names. If you study the British or the Irish curriculum, your teacher will probably refer to these as indices. Whereas if you study the American curriculum, they're called exponents. Good news is same rules apply for both. I teach students both the American curriculum and the British curriculum, so I'll probably bounce between the two, but most of the time I'm going to try and refer to them as indices. This is going to be the first of two videos on indices. This one's going to cover the basics, the next one's going to look at some more advanced procedures. Do you call them indices or exponents? Where are you watching this video from? Comment below, subscribe to my channel.
Indices, hard to see one day so small, written high on the right, don't you let it fall. It's what comes when you times a lot, just twice it's a square. You want invert with a minus out, build your math muscle up. Fractions when they come up with the root sign down, lethal weapon in your mind, like a gun without a sound.
Okay, so what are indices or exponents? Well, indices provide us a much easier way of writing quite complex sums. In the same way, we can use multiplication to show repeated addition, as in a plus a plus a can be written as 3a, we can use index notation to show repeated multiplication. A multiplied by a is a to the power of 3, or a cubed. Now these rules apply to numbers as well as using algebra. For example, in this example, we're writing 7 times 7 times 7 times 7 times 7, which we can simplify as 7 to the power of 5. If we wanted to simplify 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, we could write it as 4 to the power of 4. In this case, we refer to that number as the base number, and this number over here is the index number. When we refer to indices, indices are just the plural of index. And the index number tells us how many times we're multiplying the base by itself. The rules apply with letters and numbers alike. Okay, to get us started, there are 5 general rules that we need to be aware of. The first general rule applies to multiplication. In this question, we're doing 3 to the power of 4 multiplied by 3 squared. Now, we could write this as, which is 3 to the power of 4 multiplied by 3 squared, which simplifies to 3 to the power of 6. But we can skip this step and we can save some time if we know the rules for multiplying numbers that have exponents or indices, and also, importantly, are the same base number. When multiplying numbers like this, we can simply add the index numbers together. This doesn't only work for numbers, but would also work if we were using if we had an algebraic expression to simplify. So, in general, any number to the power of any number multiplied by the same number to the power of any number can be simplified by doing that base to the power of the two numbers added together. That's our first general rule and is very important in getting us underway with the laws of indices. The next rule that we need to be aware of is what happens when we're dividing numbers with the same base. Well, we could rewrite this, again, longhand, as divided by, and then we'd be able to, simplify it by cancelling out those 2. So we're left with 2 squared. But we're able to do this a lot quicker if we know the laws. When we're dividing numbers that have the same base, different indices, and we're dividing numbers, we can do it by subtracting the index numbers from each other. So 2 to the power of 4 divided by 2 squared is the same as, which can be simplified to 2 squared. This also, again, works if we're using algebra. So, In general, if we've got any base, any number to the power of any number, and we're dividing it by any number to the power of another number, we can simplify it by doing our base stays the same, and when we're dividing, we subtract the index numbers from each other. This is our second general rule. Okay, so moving on to our third general rule number 3. What do we do when we have brackets? Okay, well, we could rewrite this expression again longhand as 3 squared times 3 squared times 3 squared, because what we're doing is we've got 3 squared and we're raising it to the power of 3, so we are multiplying 3 squared by itself 3 times. And applying the rule that we've just worked on, general rule number 1, if I'm multiplying and the bases are the same, I can add the indices. So 2 plus 2 plus 2 is 6. So this becomes 3 to the power of 6. But we can save time if we know the general rule number 3, which is that if we are multiplying out brackets or an index number that involves brackets, we can just multiply the index numbers together. So this becomes the same as, which is. Okay, and of course, once again, we can apply the same logic using algebra. So in general, any number to the power of any number, all to the power of another number, can be simplified by doing a to the power of those two numbers multiplied together. That is our third general rule. Okay, and that brings us to our fourth and fifth general rule. Now, I hope you haven't got too bored. To try and keep you entertained a little bit, I'm going to try and see if I can juggle these board pens. Well, not bad. At least not bad for me. Right, so now we're on to our fourth and our fifth general rule. What do we do when we've got an index of 0? And what happens when I've got an index of 1? Okay, we're going to start off by looking at an index of 0. Well, how could I make an index of 0? Well, if we think about it, I could do something like 3 times 3 times 3 divided by 3 times 3 times 3, which could be written as 3 cubed divided by 3 cubed. And, well, if I simplify that, I could cross them out. But either way, I know that my, take the index numbers away. 3 take away 3 is 3 to the power of 0. But I also know that 3 to the power of 3 divided by 3 is 1. In fact, any number to the power of 0 is 1. A million to the power of 0 is 1. X to the power of 0 equals 1. And that's our general rule. Any number to the power of 0 equals 1. And the final rule is really quite straightforward. You do this already, you know this already, and it has come out in your maths before. You probably just never really thought about it. But any number to the power of 1, well, we don't write that number. Any number to the power of 1 is just itself. We're multiplying 5, we're not multiplying by anything. 5 to the power of 1 is just 5. Or x to the power of 1 is just x. And that brings us to our final general rule. Any number to the power of 1 is just that number. And that's it for this session. So to get started with index numbers, remember an index or writing numbers in exponential form or index using index notation is just a convenient way of writing more complicated numbers. Index numbers or indices represent repeated multiplication. And there are 5 basic rules that we need to know to get started with indices. Multiplication, division, what we do with brackets, what happens when we have a power of 0, and what happens when we have a power of 1. I hope this video has been useful for you. Please subscribe to my channel and keep an eye out for the next video, which we'll look at what happens when we have negative indices and when we have fractional indices, and we'll be putting all of this together.